Joining me today in the CawCast studios, you wouldn't believe how big of a crowbar I had to get to bust into these locked up studios. But hey, we're back, and joining me, I got Glenn with me. You know him, you love him. Glenn, welcome back. Welcome to the long time coming of coming on here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I want to welcome you back too. You've been missed, man. So welcome back to the potosphere. I'm happy to see you jumping back in.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I just miss rambling and talking a lot, and especially these conversations we get. So thank you. So, Glenn, we have a ton of stuff that I want to talk about at the end of this season. We have just our thoughts on the season. Was it good for us to lose? Should we bring back Paul Millsap? That article that I really loved that you wrote about Dwight Howard and who do we root for? Just stuff. But hey, everything broke loose. And what the heck is up with the Hawks right now? Everything in front office.
Yeah, I guess we can try to see who's the best guesser here, but Woj just kind of feeding us, I guess. That's where most of the information seems to be coming from. But this wouldn't. What I'm seeing wouldn't concern me as much, except for the interview that Wrestler did with AJ's 2 weeks ago. I think I would have a pretty balanced view of this could be good or this could be bad, in terms of, a lot of people don't support the president and coach title being kind of consolidated into one person. So, we've had that dialogue back and forth 100,000 times. So we know where most everyone falls on that.
Yeah.
So if it weren't for that, some of the things that Wrestler said in the interview with Chris Wilmore and Jeff Schultz, then I would be pretty laid back about what I'm seeing and just want to see where this lands. But that interview kind of charges this news a little bit a different way, I think. What do you think?
That interview, as you mentioned, that shook me to the core. I was sitting at my desk. I read the little tidbits and I read the actual article. And like you and many others, it kind of frightened me of what's going to happen. Now, for those that don't really understand why it's frightened, Glenn, help me out here. Why would this frighten me? Just about the comments real quick before we talk about what Woj went over. The comments that you were mentioning.
Well, yeah. So I think the reason that it's scary is this. So there's different ways he could have said what he was trying to say. This is my opinion. But he's an experienced business leader, so I think we can take him at his word, and that he's being quite intentional about not only what he's saying but how he's saying it. And had he said something more along the lines of, "I'm the final decision maker on the big decisions," that would make total sense to me.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's his company. It's his investment. The big decisions that change the trajectory of the franchise, whether that's on-court product or any other component of the business, would come across as a quite normal statement to me. But the way that he articulated was, "I am the decision maker," and he didn't qualify at all, and so that just makes me, as a fan, observer, or whatever role I'm taking at a certain moment, just feel like he's being way more hands-on than is healthy for a sports team or even a sports business. So it just came across as being way more hands-on than you see with other successful franchises in my view.
So I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat, my conspiracy hat, because talking about conspiracies is one of my favorite things to do in all of basketball. And conspiracy time right here with Josh. Mike Budenholzer has been extremely successful as an assistant coach under Greg Popovich with the Spurs. He's won how many titles? Do you know how many titles he's won as an assistant coach? Real quick, 2 or 3.
I think
numerous.
I think it's at least 4.
Okay, at least 4. Okay, won numerous titles and then just moved up to be the head under Greg Popovich. Has gained so much respect from everyone in the Spurs organization, including fans, Popovich himself has mentioned how much, how well of a job he's done. Mike Budenholzer's coming to Atlanta. He got a 60-win team on the map, first, division win, take it or leave it for whatever you think. And coach of the year, everyone, just all these accolades, how wonderful he is. And we know his offense. We've seen everything that he's run, the sharing, the spacing, everything, just everything that's led to success. And then this summer we got Dwight Howard. Conspiracy time. Those comments about the owner,
Yep.
at least for me, it kind of makes sense now of how that signing happened. Because I don't mean to talk bad about the guy. He's good at what he does. The one thing or two things he does, but he's not a very Hawksy player. And the comments recently from the owner, to me, just kind of like, aha. Am I going too far here? Am I losing you with my conspiracies?
No, you're not losing me at all. So what I think I would try to add to that is, if I had to guess at how Dwight showed up, I my best guess and trying to connect the dots. So this is basing on a little bit of information and then trying to speculate and hopefully a bit of an educated way on top of those few dots we have, is that the thing that I appreciate about the wrestler and the current ownership group is the investment they're making in the practice facility, the D-League team, bringing in P3, all those sorts of things. So I think everyone's been excited to see the types of investments we've not previously seen with the franchise. And so I'm guessing, Dwight is quite marketable in the city of Atlanta.
Yep.
He has a brand there. Atlanta has struggled to bring star power to their franchises. And so I kind of wonder if wrestler and the ownership group approached Bud and the basketball operations folks and said, hey, we're sinking all of this money into this, what I call infrastructure build out that, and Dwight, we feel like, is very marketable. And I wonder if the question was, can you make this work? And then the basketball ops folks came back and they had some discussion around, we'll try to make it work. We'll do our best to make it work, or something in that category. Because in terms of him trying to bring in revenue to support the investment in those other areas, I think from a business perspective only, it makes sense. But then you wonder if there were conversations around, I think the word, we use the word too much now, the word around culture, and those sorts of things. I think Dwight has done things to not represent himself in the best way along the way, but I also think that a lot of the things that are pinned on him have been overblown, and he's gotten more than a bad rep that he deserves. But but there's some of that he definitely owns. I mean, after last season, he went on basically a PR tour and put it out there that he was underengaged his last season with the Rockets. So there's certainly something there. But I feel like there has to be some relationship between all of this money they're putting into infrastructure development and then needing to do something to generate more revenue, and kind of talking the basketball ops folks into taking this risk on this marketable guy that it may or may not work out. So that's how I kind of connect the dots. But that's certainly a lot of speculation in that.
That's you know what, you are a natural. How do I put this? I need to get you a tinfoil hat. I loved it. It's wonderful. Welcome to the conspiracy corner.
This is a corner I'm not often in, so somehow you make me feel safe over here in this corner.
Welcome. I love it.
Thank you.
Yes, man. No, that is a great point. Dwight Howard is very marketable. Multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year. And the fact that, one, he is from Atlanta. He's not from, Marietta. He's not from Kennesaw. He's not from Augusta. He's from Atlanta.
Right.
So that is one thing right there. Two, those years that he's terrorized the Hawks, like I for one don't forget the years that the infamous playoff series against the Magic where we were blown out. I may or may not have paid money to go to those games, but I went to two of those games. I
Okay.
still I still have the rally flag, rally towel. And you see it with the fans, whether it be on Twitter or our comment section at Peachtree Hoops or whatever. But some people are willing to overlook the bad, and not just that, but also commentators on TV like big guy in the middle, don't attack the middle. Is it's buying into the hype and marketing, and hey, we're getting all this for our new stuff. Cool. And this could, I don't know, it could end out good. I doubt it, but this is reminding me of a time a few years ago when there was a new team with a new owner who also had a flashy new co-owner who owned less than 1% of the team, but that's otherwise. But he wanted to get these big names to his city for this new team in the city to take over the big city of New York in Brooklyn. And he went and did all these things to get guys who probably wouldn't fit. And hey, we got the Brooklyn Nets. So I don't know. It's just kind of reminding me of, I'm just seeing this happen right now. If you guys want a close NBA example.
Yeah, well, that's certainly what happened in Brooklyn was on another level than what we're seeing now. But I hope that's not the direction we're heading, because they were trading out unprotected draft picks, and we don't know that we're not heading towards that. We're not there yet, but I hope that's not where we're heading for sure.
Yeah, we still have our draft picks, which is a good thing.
Yep.
We have 2 this year in the draft. Don't we technically have the Cavs pick?
No, that's 2019. So we have.
That's 2019.
Yeah.
Thank you. Fact checking.
Yeah, that's okay. We have the 31st pick though, because we have Brooklyn's second round pick, which is basically. So some people say the 31st pick is the most valuable because you get the highest draft pick in the second round, but you're not obligated to
pay
the rookie scale, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But alas, we're all. Jeez. Well, as details unfold later on, we'll have more information about this. But right now, we're just kind of speculating. Wow, I don't know. Am I crazy to think that, and I really hate to say this, but am I crazy to think that Bud might not be with the team in a couple of years? There's also news coming from Woj that he's being moved down to, just head coaching duties. And you mentioned before, Glenn, of how some may agree or not agree, or their thoughts of president versus coach and, that role. But in this instance, it seems like not only is Budenholzer possibly not getting players that he wants, i.e. Dwight Howard in the marketability, but also it seems like that he's getting demoted. Do I have to fear that the Hawks' biggest asset might be leaving the Hawks in a few years?
Well, I don't think that's crazy at all. I think it's a very natural concern given what we're seeing. And it might be so if you look at the president plus coach situations across the league, we basically only have one example of that being successful, and that's with the Spurs. No one else has done it successfully. Doc hasn't even got his team past the second round as good as they've been at times. Stan Van Gundy looked to be heading in the right direction last year, but this year was a big disappointment.
That's what I was about to bring up. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you really only have one example, and that's San Antonio. But what's different about the San Antonio example is that he was in the front office before he made himself the coach. So he was the decision maker in the front office. And then if you know anything about the Spurs organizational culture or their decision making culture, it's a very highly collaborative culture. And so basically when people look at the Spurs and they look at, Pop has the president title, RC Buford has the GM title, but people look at that and they really don't see any distinction between the two of those, and that they're going to challenge each other. They're going to bring different ideas together, but at the end of the day, they're going to make the case for what they think the right decision is. But as a team, they're going to get aligned and it is going to be a collaborative decision at the end of the day. Now, we're on the outside looking in, but everything that I read and hear about the organization reflects that reality. And so I personally don't think that Bud would have a major issue with being the coach, because he came to us with zero front office experience, and I think that he seems self-aware enough to know that it was natural for him to get that temporarily, because the guy that hired him ran out of town, and that just gave him a little bit of security to make sure
Very good point.
that someone else wasn't going to come in and bounce him out and bring his quote guy in. So it made sense temporarily to kind of give him a little bit of security, but it wouldn't surprise me at all for him to have the self-awareness to say, hey, my background is 100% in coaching. I really don't have any front office background at all. So if we can bring the right person in for me to work with, more with than for, that being the distinction. We're going to want to work with this person, not necessarily for this person.
Makes sense. Yeah.
No matter what the org chart looks like, right? I think that might be fine, but that would also mean that he has to trust Wrestler with this decision, and that's where I start to have a lot of concern about whether that could be a reality right now or not. Is he going to trust Wrestler to bring someone in that basically has hiring and firing this power around Bud's job? That makes me feel very concerned that Bud might not be here, say, 2 years from now.
Come on, man! You got to disagree with me on something to give me hope or bring me down. This is horrible. Oh boy. Okay, so my fears are. Oh man. Well, do you have anything else to mention about this whole ordeal?
So the Wilcox thing is weird, because in that he was out and now he's not out, and
right, yeah, I forgot to ask about that.
Yeah, but again, if you've read anything about his background, Wilcox's background is on almost exclusively on the scouting side, not the decision making, right? And so he really came into that role basically working for Bud, doing all of the day-to-day work, if you will, of the front office. But Wilcox doesn't have the experience making the broader decisions within the front office. So I think neither Wilcox nor Bud really have the background to hold the entirety of that position. And so I think that this could be a very good thing. But the thing that makes me concerned that this isn't the most constructive thing that's happening is, can we trust Wrestler to put the right person in that position? That's obviously a huge variable right now, right?
Yeah. So one thing with Wilcox that I do kind of wonder, you mentioning the scouting side actually kind of makes a ton of sense for me now that I think about it. So I was just joking at some point in time, just throwing the question out there, like, should the Hawks keep Wilcox? Because, it's not like, how do I put this? We've had major success. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. We haven't made, a ton of success with Wilcox as the GM. Now, one of the main responses that I've gotten to a statement like this is that Budenholzer is the president. And I'm like, so what is the difference between the president and the GM? Because I feel a lot of people are unsure about this, because it makes it seem like Budenholzer is the one who, say, screws up a draft pick and skipped out on drafting who's the man, Rudy Gobert, or I think that's his name. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's just like, so what do you see that Wilcox does? Because you say he has a good history in scouting, and I totally see that now that I think about it, but I don't know. What is the difference? I just don't know, man.
Well, so I'll give you my view, based upon what I have learned, what I've read, and so the GM is typically going to, I guess the way I would phrase it is, be the basketball nerd in every conversation. So they're going to be very kind of rooted into the X's and O's, into the talent evaluation, all that sort of stuff. And what's different at the level of president of basketball ops is that the president of basketball ops has to collaborate with the business side. And so that's something the GM would not do. The GM would be solely focused on basketball functions, and the president is not making decisions on the business side, but the business plan and the basketball plan have to join up at some point, right? And so the president is the person who, unlike the GM, is interacting with the business function and kind of trying to make sure that the basketball plan is reflective of the business plan. And so that's the distinction that I would call out.
Okay. All right. Just a quick thing, because that is one conversation I see, on the interwebs. Not as big as the former number 15 versus the current number 8. But hey, that's a story that is a conversation for another time.
Well, there's one other thing I wanted to. So you're really dragging me in tinfoil corner here, Josh. But and this is just a curiosity. This is not something I'm predicting or whatever. But it makes you wonder. David Griffin in Cleveland doesn't have a contract to be the Cavaliers GM next year, and there's speculation that Orlando's chasing him because they recently fired their GM and they're looking for a new leader of business ops. And there's also some rumors that the Clippers, should they move on from Doc, are interested in him as well. Makes me wonder. I have just a very, very slight curiosity if Ressler is going to try to chase the guy that currently is the GM of the Cavs. If he's trying to
I'm breathing very deeply right now. I just took a giant sigh when you said that, but
well, just the timing of him rearranging the front office at a time when David Griffin is putting himself out there as being open to exploring other organizations. There's a tiny part of me that makes me feel like that timing is may not be a coincidence. That's all I'll say.
You know what? I'm screaming internally right now. Just as you say that, because it would make sense. That'd be another big splash if you think about it too.
Yep.
We know that that'd be a bad idea, but just to the casual fans, they'll see that the Cavs, how successful they've been the last few years, and they'll be like, "Oh, great!" Meanwhile, me and you have seen the moves that the Cavs have made and been like, yeah, but they have LeBron James. Yeah, but they're trading away draft picks, but they have LeBron James. Like, they haven't exactly made a move. I would say the Cavs have made a move that made me go like, oh my goodness, that was brilliant. Like,
yep.
What's the best thing they've got? Kevin Love for Andrew Wiggins, and they at that time didn't even kind of realize that maybe they shouldn't have gone for Kevin Love, because as LeBron ages, he's going to age into that position as a power forward. So it's just kind of like, maybe we should have, I don't know, got another small forward or a center or shooting. I don't know. But
no, I agree with you. So I think Griffin has a pretty good reputation. Like he was with Phoenix, but he started with Phoenix for a while, and he has a pretty good reputation based upon what I read. But you're exactly. But I mean, there's probably 40 guys in the circle that has good reputations, right? The thing that's different about him is he, like you said, he has LeBron, and the other thing that what having LeBron means is that, okay, you have the best player in the planet, so that's a pretty good place to start. He was there when you got the job, so congratulations on that. But the other thing that it means is that, for example, when the buyout market gets established, Cleveland is very often the first choice that those guys in the buyout market want to explore, and so they got Darren. Well, so they do very well. And when you look at their cap sheet, you're like, oh god, they can't add anybody, and then you got guys basically willing to play for them for almost free after they get bought out and stuff like that. So he has so many advantages in that position that, in my mind, it's almost impossible to evaluate how good or bad or anywhere in between in terms of how he's doing that job. It's impossible to evaluate.
He has a job where he is in a buyout position, where he got Darren Williams, and everyone forgot Andrew Bogut. So it's kind of you see why I'm screaming internally right now.
Yeah, they got Channing Frye last year. I mean,
geez, yeah. Okay.
I know Frye was technically a trade, but it's still because Frye was willing to commit to going there and staying there. So
Yeah, yeah, and
But the reason I thought about him is because like what you connected the dots immediately. It'd be a splashy thing, just like bringing Dwight to town.
yeah, be a
So
splashy thing. Oh my goodness. I'm shaking right now. Like you guys, I know this is audio, but I'm just like, why do they have to
I
do
can't
this to me?
confirm. I can see what Josh is doing right now. I can confirm he's shaking.
Yeah. We're seconds away from throwing things across the no. I've sat through many horrible moves in the past. Hawk stability was going so well for some time. I was kind of getting worried about the team, and I'm glad they're going back to what I'm used to growing up watching the team. So,
Yeah, I died laughing. I don't remember his last night before when you commented, "We're going back to our roots." I thought that was hysterical.
oh. Oh my goodness. Okay. I have to laugh to keep myself from crying.
Yep.
That's kind of what I was doing yesterday. I couldn't work yesterday when I read the news about Wilcox leaving and the whole Bud demotion thing. I couldn't work. I was at my office. I was on my computer, and I was like, I need to take a 15-minute break because I can't concentrate without refreshing my Twitter or PTH or whatever.
Yeah, it's like when there's like big political news breaking. You're sitting there refreshing Twitter, trying to see, is there what's actually happening here? What's the actual result here? It's you're in limbo, and you're like, well, can I walk away from my laptop for 15 minutes, or am I going to miss it?
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, guys, we've talked about this. You know what? I'm gonna take a quick break. I need this break, guys. So do you. But what's a break for a podcast? All right, guys, we'll be right back, and we're going to go over a couple of the other topics that I actually had planned to talk about before all hell break loose.
Sounds good.
Cool. And I'm going to try to edit this out,
Okay.
edit out a little break. I don't know. And okay, we'll just move on, and I'll have to work the magic of my editing.
All
Okay,
right.
guys, we're back. I took a lap around the house, got my heart rate going, and we're back. Glenn, still with me, man? How you doing?
I'm good. So that first topic was so charged that we're gonna have to work to make the rest of the podcast not seem boring compared to that, right?
Oh yeah.
So we're gonna have to get into it and do our job well.
All right. So, my first question for you. I just kind of really want a quick answer, your quick initial thoughts, quick fire thoughts. Okay. So, just quick thoughts of how the season ended. What did you think? Talk about players, the year, whatever.
I think for the most part it ended like most people expected. I think that there were things that happened, and there were times in the season that any fan can get talked into kind of seeing more there than that is actually there. That's very normal part of fandom, I think. But I think that a lot of people, if we put our collective minds together, if you will, that our collective minds kind of saw the flaws that were there and saw the risks that were there with this roster. And even I have to qualify this and even put myself out there to say that when we did our preseason predictions, I predicted 50 wins and a third seed. Now, luckily, I explained my prediction in that what I said, what I recall writing was that prediction says more about how I feel about the Eastern Conference than I do about the Hawks. And so I feel like that aspect of my prediction was true, and that the Eastern Conference is very, very soft. I haven't done looked up absolute historical fact, but I've been hearing people say that Boston is the worst first seed in history, or first worst seed in recent history in terms of wins and point differential. So I'm just repeating what I've heard. I don't know that to be true. So the Eastern Conference was very, very soft. That was true. The thing that the expectation I built into my prediction that didn't hold true was the fact that I just thought that Mike Budenholzer would ultimately get his team to a level of consistency that's always happened every year, apart from when Horford went down with injury.
Yeah.
By January, typically you see the team hit a level of consistency, and they
Yes.
never reached that this year. And so when you look at, like, for example, their record against teams over 500 and all those blowout losses they had to teams under 500, that was the part I did not anticipate at all, which is why I overshot my prediction by 7 wins. And then if you also look, they landed in the 5th seed. That, I mean, guys, they were almost a -1 point differential, and they only won 43 games. And with 5 games, with 5 games to go, we weren't even sure if they were going to make the playoffs. And so the fact that team finished 5th says everything I think you need to know about how soft
the East was.
They
finished 5th and went 6 games. Man, we were starting Tim Hardaway Jr. at shooting guard.
What's the first-year starter at point guard?
First-year starter, point guard. We were starting a rookie as
small forward. Yeah,
in the playoffs, and it's just
he played well. The rookie played well.
He did play well. He played better than I thought. I'm glad he embraced his real quick. I'm just glad he kind of embraced his role, because it's not like we were looking at him to score, and he did everything else that we needed. So that's really nice. Anyway, like you say, the season, this team had an 8-game losing streak. Is that what it was? Do you remember during the year, Glenn?
It may have reached 9. It was at least
8 or 9. They had a 9-game losing streak and was still in the playoffs. That is how bad the East was.
Yep, it was bad.
It was so bad. Like, I was looking at Tankathon. I'm like, how are we not in the lottery right now? Well, Thankfully, Charlotte was doing so bad. Same with Chicago for a stretch there, and Milwaukee wasn't doing great. And it was just like, wow, the East was worse than I thought. It was amazing. And, geez. So, okay, we got that question out the way. So it leads me to ask this, which is kind of something I wanted to really talk about, before the Giant earlier conversation happened. Is it a good thing the Hawks lost in the first round to us as fans, to me and you as fans? Because with the comments that Wrestler was making about the team, and, hey, we're the best. This is a better roster than 2015. Man, I can't believe we made it through that first part of the podcast without mentioning that.
Yeah, that's a great point. that is the weirdest comment he made in the interview for sure.
Oh, because they have a big that can rebound. Woo. But anyway, it's just, is it a good thing we lost? Because imagine if we won, we'd be playing Boston right now. I feel they could at least take a game or 2 from Boston, and that would kind of solidify a continuing of overpaying to me.
Yep.
It might solidify a continuality of bad decisions had the Hawks won.
I think I hear you saying that you think it is a good thing they lost. Is that true?
I didn't say that. Yes, I did. Nobody tell Glenn. Yeah, I didn't say. Yes, I did.
Well, you're great at this because you're always forcing me to answer the question before you do. So I had to turn it back on you one time.
Hey! You see how I deflect there? Yes. It's a skill I've learned.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Real quickly.
Okay.
I'll let you talk. My 15 seconds real quick. Yes, I'll go ahead and say it. Yes, I'm kind of glad we lost in the sense that I don't want bad decisions to hamper this franchise. I don't want to see Tim Hardaway Jr. get a max contract, because that's going to happen if we win. Had we won the series, Tim Hardaway had 6 bad games. He was due for 1 good game. And when he makes it on the national stage with the good game, someone's going to overpay and we're going to match. Okay, go ahead. I'm done.
I absolutely think it's a good thing we lost. And I would share your sentiment that any any results that would have reinforced the bad decisions they made in the last year would have been bad for the organization. And so the way that I would describe it is they needed the feedback that this team is not good. They needed that to be kind of spelled out as plainly as it could. And I was even concerned because I felt like in that playoff series that Washington was playing down to the Hawks quite a bit of that. And so even when I saw the Hawks competing, and you want to see your team compete and play hard and fight hard and all those sorts of things, but I think that Washington is a team that is very talented, but I don't think they have a lot of confidence in themselves yet. And that's understandable because they haven't really accomplished a lot yet, as talented as a group as they are.
Yeah.
Especially in the backcourt. But when they were playing down to the Hawks, part of me was like, well, as a fan, you want to hope that for example, when I was watching, I was hoping that Schroeder would play well and you would see growth with him. I was hoping that he would just not get pushed all over the court by John Wall, who's way better than him and way bigger than him. And so, I was hoping to see kind of things that for me were just hopeful indicators that the future of our young guys might be something to be a little bit excited about. But when the Wizards were playing down to them, I was also like, oh my God, if we take this to 7 games and it goes down the last few minutes, then the decision makers might be like, oh man, we were that close. See, this team is better than people say it is. And so I think they needed to see all the flaws and all the shortcomings as plainly as they could. And I think that's the best outcome that we could have seen in the playoffs in terms of those folks realizing what they have and what they don't have.
I was rooting for really 2 things. I was rooting for Dennis to basically exactly like what you said for Dennis. I just, though, didn't want to see his scoring. I kind of wanted to see him as an assist man. He limited his turnovers, which is something to me. I'm kind of like, okay, he limited his turnovers and still scored and got whatever assists. Like I will say I was kind of happy with what he did, though granted, at the same time, I was thinking, wow, they are – it's no secret that this Hawks team's offense is terrible.
Yep.
For how much they were allowing us to score, I said to a friend at work, I said, Schroeder was continuously getting in the high 20s and 30s. I can't imagine what Isaiah Thomas is going to do to this team if that is a hint. And hey, what
53.
But that
53.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, well, real quickly about Dennis, did you think Dennis performed well in the playoffs, or was it kind of smoke and mirrors because of the bad kind of defense that Washington was showing and really their very bad bench?
I liked his energy and his effort overall, and
Yeah.
so I'm going to try not to go all the way to my nerd side here real quick, but I see reasons for optimism in Dennis' perimeter shooting in that he's a good free throw shooter, and typically if a guy is a good free throw shooter, there's at least some hope that he can extend that out to a deeper shot. And
one immediate example I can think of real quick for the people. Now, this isn't necessarily true or going to happen, but Kawhi Leonard was kind of like this in college. But go ahead.
Yep. Yeah. So, and also the fact that Dennis, when he takes a 3-point shot, it's a set shot, not a jump shot, which means that there's more replication between his free throw technique and his deep shot. And so typically if a guy is a jump shooter from the 3-point line and he's obviously no one does a jump shot from the free throw line, then you have more concern about the variance in that form. But the fact that Dennis shoots a set shot from the 3-point line means that I think that there's some reasonable optimism that he's going to become not a top 20 shooter in the league ever, but a 37, 38% 3-point shooter.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, which is good enough to open up the room he needs to attack off the dribble. So I thought he played well. I think a lot of people are critical of the fact that he doesn't facilitate more and those sorts of things. But if you look across the league, that's what point guards are doing now. They're point. If you look at the probably I would guess 20 of the teams, their point guard is one of their top 2 field goals attempts guys. So whether it's Steph
Yeah.
Curry or Dame Lillard or Kyrie, so point guards are becoming what used to be called lead guards, and
Yes.
they are becoming more shot makers. But I do think that Dennis needs to become more of a facilitator. I just happen to think that he has to develop confidence in his ability to produce scoring, and once he's confident he can do that, then he can kind of create that secondary action as a facilitator. But he has a ways to go.
Yeah, I was about to say, you make it seem like Dennis lacks confidence, which is okay. One thing
you got me there.
One thing though with him, I will say with Dennis, something I did kind of notice in the playoffs, because surprise guys, I don't watch a ton of Hawks games because where I live, it is very hard for me to watch the Hawks. But Dennis seemed to do better when he was playing with like Muscala at the 5 or Ilyasova at the 5, because that spread the floor out for him. It seemed like to me it was kind of a systematic, I guess you would say, play call or whatever, like you'd see in football. But it's just kind of like, hey, if Dennis can run off the pick and roll and get to the basket, he's faster than 99% of the people, 98% of the people in the league. That seemed to be his thing, and he drove a heck of a lot this season. More so than I've seen from guys in year past. Not saying anything bad about Jeff, but more than I've seen. And I don't know. Maybe it has to do with the guys around him, and also Hardaway can be kind of black hole-ish with the bad shots he takes at times. But I don't know. My 2 cents. So
I definitely think he's more effective when there are guys that can create space for him, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, what were we talking about? Good thing that the Hawks lost.
Yeah, I got to fight that.
Yeah, good thing they lost. I'm sure that's something I'm going to catch a lot of heat on for bringing up. I can see now. You weren't rooting for the Hawks. I mean, I was rooting for certain guys.
Right.
I was rooting for Prince because I wanted to see how he does, with the minutes on. I was rooting for Dennis. I was rooting for Hardaway to not shoot well because that might bring his price down, and for us to realize we need to basically bring him off the bench, because to me he's a better bench player, and get another starter at the shooting guard position. What else was I rooting for? I was rooting for Dwight.
For Dwight to sit in the fourth quarter? Were you rooting for that?
I was rooting for Dwight in the sense of, oh my goodness, man, did he look stiff out there? Like, you saw them defending the pick and roll. He would not leave the paint. Now, I'll say something good about Dwight real quick. I noticed in this series against the Celtics, Gortat is a way bigger threat. Okay, Gortat wasn't really doing anything, but that was probably by design because, hey, the Hawks lost the series and Bradley Beal torched us. Now, oh my goodness, man, he cannot move. It makes you realize I'm looking at these Celtics games like a ex-lover or ex-boyfriend or something is looking at an ex with, like, who's dating a guy that's out of my league. I'm kind of looking at the Celtics like that right now. I'm looking at Horford like rotate, going with the help defense on the pick and roll. I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous right now.
Yeah, I know. It was interesting watching him in the first round against Chicago because Robin Lopez, for a game or two, was kind of eating his lunch on the boards. Yeah. But what you saw was that as that series progressed, they figured it out and they fixed it, which is something that they were never able to do when he was with the Hawks. Once they kind of had kind of lost that phase of the game in the series, the Hawks were never able to kind of figure out a path back to neutralizing that. But with the Celtics, they were able to figure out a way to neutralize that. So good for them,
They went smaller, which is
Yes, they did. You're right. Yep.
It was one of the things I loved about the Hawks of past teams is when teams want to go small against us, that's still our normal lineup.
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
like we never went small, and this was the very first season where you kind of saw the Hawks go small, where they'd have Muscala at not Muscala, Millsap at the 5, and we saw some Torrent Prince at the 4 in the playoffs, and you know what? That led to a comeback, and
yeah, I'll even put it differently. So the Celtics were down 0-2 in a playoff series, and they fixed it by starting Gerald Green.
well, I also give some credit to everyone's most hated point guard that was getting run out of Chicago 3 months ago, but that's another topic right there. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not the most popular guy in the world, but he's still as savvy as he ever was.
Right? Yeah. And man. Yeah, so I was rooting for Dwight because, part of me wanted to be like, please prove me wrong, Dwight, that, you could do this stuff and also bring up your trade value. But, I was really the only two things I was rooting for was Jeff and Prince. Not Jeff, sorry. Dennis and Prince. And, I got what I wanted. And that's kind of what I wanted. And I'm hoping they can build wisely for the future. Now, this also kind of goes to the next part because we didn't talk about him in the playoffs. Moving on. Paul Millsap. Now, everybody is telling me we should just let Paul Millsap walk if he's demanding the max. For a 32-year-old player on a team that we were lottery bound with Millsap when he was hurt. We were lottery bound until he came back. Now, we're not exactly a good team. No, we're not a good team. Yeah, we got over 500, but what do you think? So everyone knows Paul Millsap should leave, but give me a case of why we should keep Paul Millsap.
Well, so if we've been to a line so far, this is where I'm going to be different. So we'll get to fight a little bit about this one.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me make it clear. I do not think the Hawks should give him the 5-year max. I think that's absolutely the wrong thing to do. But what I will say is that when people ask me, should the Hawks just let Millsap walk? My first instinct is to say no. But I have to admit that a lot of that is probably rooted in my background in management positions and kind of my business background. Because one of the experiences I've had in that part of my background is that once you have a person who represents you really, really well, that is so important in terms of just team building and kind of having someone that's modeling the behavior you're looking for, the work ethic you're looking for, the team mindset you're looking for, all those things that we love about Paul, right? And so for me, I'm like, wow, he's such a great person to have around to kind of establish the basic threshold of things you're looking for in terms of work ethic and all those things I mentioned. So I think it's absolutely fine to be open to bringing Paul back. But if his priority is to get as much money as he can get, which is absolutely his right, I wouldn't be critical of him at all. If that's his priority, then I do think you have to let him go to someone that's going to give him all that money. But if, what I would share is that Paul Millsap spent 5 years in Utah, and he was known as a solid to a good player. He's been in Atlanta for 4 years. He's made the All-Star team 4 years, and he's kind of elevated himself to being viewed as a top 20 to 25 player. A lot of that is the result of the work that he's put in, but Coach Budenholzer and his staff have been a part of Paul reaching that level in his career as well. And so if the mindset with Paul is that he's happy with kind of his employment situation, and you can sit down and have a conversation about something that works for him and works for the organization, I think it's absolutely fine to explore that conversation. But it shouldn't be the full 5-year max. The second part of that, sorry, Josh, I'll try to keep this for being too long.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I also have a philosophy that if a team wants to prioritize putting the best on-court product that they can, that is a reasonable thing to consider. But my view is that so long as you don't commit yourself beyond 2 years of financial commitment, and so what I would say is that if you can, for the next 2 years, you're going to operate over the cap, but you're not going to trade your draft picks. You're going to retain your draft picks. And as long as 2 years from now, you can get back under the cap and get back to a point of financial flexibility, I think it's reasonable to go down that path. So Dwight's contract is good for 2 more years, right? And so if they re-sign Paul, but they know that, okay, well, if this does not work out in terms of, I don't say that they're going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals or whatever, because as long as they have Dwight eating up that much cap space, it's going to be tough to do that. But it just means in terms of having the organization heading in the right direction in terms of culture, behaviors, teamwork, all those sorts of things. That if you can work your way out of it without having to attach draft assets to get rid of contracts, I think that's fine. I think 2 years of commitment is fine, even if you don't see yourself as the contender status. But beyond 2 years, I think is ridiculous. But what that means is that if they want to go down that path of retaining Paul and exploring these next 2 years, that means that you can't give Tim Hardaway anything beyond a 2-year contract. You can't give Mike Muscala anything beyond a 2-year contract because you already got Bazemore and Dennis committed beyond those 2 years. And so all of the rest of your decisions would have to line up to that philosophy. So I see a very narrow path to Paul coming back and it not being a terrible thing, but it would have to be managed, exactly down to a very specific plan. And I don't know how realistic it is to expect them to execute a plan that detailed, that specific. If that makes sense.
Especially when this year's playoff team was much better than the 60-win team. So
right, exactly.
Okay, so you mentioned some very good things about Millsap there, which my immediate thought that I feel like I have to share. I lied, everybody. I was rooting for 3 things in the playoffs. Well, 4 if you include the Hawks losing. I was rooting. The petty side of me was rooting for Paul Millsap after the whole crybaby comments.
Yep,
and he showed up. That's all. That's all. The petty side of me. Okay.
You were not alone.
So my main thing I kind of question of why we should keep Millsap, really the only kind of thing few things I thought was, I think he is the best teammate, best player, best overall guy I have ever rooted for any franchise that I have followed. Joe Johnson was my previous, favorite player, and even he had his issues. But Paul Millsap, despite everything, he is the epitome of just like everything. I'm just like, wow, this guy is great. He's just silently good, and you don't see any drama with him off the court. He's one of the greatest teammates. He doesn't complain about anything on the court. He does everything to make the team better. He's out there doing it on the offensive end and also on defense defending. He's out there doing it on the offensive end and on defense defending LeBron when they play the Cavs. Like, he's everything I love in a player. I agree with you. 5 years.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I was just say he's a guy that it's easy to really want to see him stay on your team. Just setting out all the other kind of, Max. He's a guy that's easy to root for, and he's a guy that really easy guy to root for being on your team.
Yeah, we signed him on a chance, kind of like he wanted to prove it when he signed here in Atlanta when he first came. He took less money to come back to Atlanta after, visiting Orlando in free agency. I'm trying to hold back from tearing up. You know what? I love Paul. I love you, Paul. Just everything that I would want a player to learn, I would want them to to learn from him. And also, I kind of feel like he's the player that kind of keeps Dennis in check, in the sense of Dennis might be going crazy, but then, if it comes up to Millsap, Dennis will listen.
Yeah, and the other thing the other reason I feel like I want to at least explore the possibility of Paul coming back might be a good thing is that imagine that Paul is gone and then Dwight gets to consume all of that mental space that Paul currently keeps stable. I mean, think about the vacuum that would create for Dwight just to occupy more of the mind space of the team. That would not be good.
Oh, no, not at all. Also, it's no mystery. The cap rises it feels like the cap raises every single year in the NBA. So I'll just go ahead and say some injury could happen in the future, and Paul Millsap could be an asset. This is a team that isn't winning a championship like with the roster it is now. It's probably another first-round knockout, and Paul Millsap is definitely an asset to a team, to anybody. So that's another reason to keep him.
Yeah, if you get him on a 4-year deal or even a 5-year deal that's not so big at the end, I think that to think you can trade him in year 5 is crazy, but to think that if it's not going well, that they think you can't trade him halfway through that contract, I think it's crazy to just think you can't trade him halfway through the contract.
Yeah, and shoot, Carmelo's kind of up there in the same situation. Did Carmelo make the All-Star team this year? He did, didn't he? No,
he did not.
Okay.
And actually, when they were trying to replace an injured player, he said that he didn't want to. He put it out there. He didn't want to be on the All-Star team. He wanted a break.
Okay, so it makes my point even more. Carmelo has all this baggage and everything, but yet the Knicks could still view him as an asset for one of those teams desperate enough. That's just an example, not necessarily the same situation, but
and hey, Paul plays defense too. So
Paul plays defense, and I feel he's just one of those guys that makes everybody better. You know what? And that was the topic I wanted to talk about today. This was actually going to be my headliner topic. The Cape, besides, is it a good thing the Hawks lost? Why we should keep Paul Millsap? Because that's just something that I see not a lot of people agreeing on. Now, on the other end, here's where you're about to fight me.
Right.
The Hawks should not keep Paul Millsap because I feel that without Paul Millsap, the ownership will see that this team is not good at all and they are lottery bound. Without Paul Millsap, this team is a lottery. They are maybe 12th best, 11th or 12th best.
I'm not going to fight you on that. That's a reasonable path to consider. 100%.
And I kind of want the ownership to see that, and that they should be really smart with their decisions and actually get basketball guys instead of signing freaking Kent Bazemore to the deal he got. And we knew the financial issues that were upcoming with the Hawks in the upcoming season. We knew that one of the main reasons the Hawks were they were a second best defensive team in the NBA. Yes, they had a really good team. Yes, made it to the second round last year. Yes. But one of the big issues was the fact that we just kind of hit that hole at small forward of just if we went up against the guys, the LeBrons, the Paul Georges, the whoever's, the Jimmy Butlers, we were just kind of small at that position and had nothing to defend it. And why did we? It's not like he made the team better either. It's we're going back to how I felt last summer.
The other thing I would say is that the entire market overpaid wings last year. So, there certainly is. Kent's contract creates an obstacle that we all wish weren't there. But there were 4 other teams at least that were willing to give him the same deal. So at the time, I looked at it like, well, they're kind of doing what most of the market is doing. And generally, I like Kent. I think Kent's an easy guy to root for too, generally speaking. But I do think that entering the season, starting Kent and Thabo on the wings, they're both defense first players, but they're both neither of them really bring a lot of bulk to those certain defensive assignments that you're going to run into when you play the best teams, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, those two guys were never going to produce enough offense together on the wing to really kind of make it work. So
That was a big thing, especially because the NBA is special, where they have the draft prior to free agency. Just one of the things was you say that about Tabo, that you have bring back Bazemore, but also the rookies that we drafted.
Yep.
That we drafted two guys to play in the wing, and one of them specifically with his Afro self and everything, really that you're assuming the Hawks are trying to groom as to play, a future 2 spot, who essentially to me kind of had the exact same skill set. Though, not as kind of developed or smaller, but kind of had the same skill set as Kent Bazemore. And especially knowing that you had Hardaway on the roster as well, who's going to be a restricted free agent. So to me, it was just kind of like, why shoot yourselves in the foot? Now, some of that is hindsight because I didn't know Taurean Prince would develop the way that he did. And if I knew that, I definitely would have disagreed with the signing. But I don't know. It's just it was a bad decision at the time, and now it's still kind of like, yeah, it's really not helping.
Yeah, it's strange. It's strange, like how deep they went at that position between still having Tabo, re-signing Kent, drafting 2 wings, and then kind of not being sure what you had in Hardaway. There was never any way for all of those guys to play this year, So that was a little bit awkward about how they handled that too.
Oh, and we had Kyle Korver on the team too.
Oh yeah. The best wing player on the team when we started the season. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So and Kyle was getting minutes because he was the only one on the team outside of Millsap that I could depend on taking a jump shot.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
And it was such a bad idea when it happened. Man, but hindsight, I know it's complete hindsight, but just imagine going into the playoffs. Imagine just like, okay, this is complete hypothetical, but imagine had we brought back Horford and signed Prince and kept Korver going into the playoffs. Like, okay, all right. The crying is over, Glenn.
Yep, they would have been better. They would have been better this year.
Yeah,
but that could be good or bad in terms of where ownership wants to go.
Yeah. Well, okay, but big elephant in the room right there. But hey, that's going into the future. So miss you, Paul Millsap. You wrote an article about Dwight Howard. I wanted to go over it, but we've spent a lot of time on everything earlier. Yep. So I just want to say, I thought it was a great article that you wrote, and I really love something that, I wasn't seeing a ton of on the interwebs, on Twitter, on Peachtree Hoops, on whatever other blog I read, CBS Sports, Bill Simmons, whatever. You actually brought up the point of the positive aspects that Dwight brought to the team, and more as like, is it really his fault they got so much worse? The Hawks took a giant step down in backup point guard this year, which is something I feel is mentioned amongst us super nerds, but
right.
Yeah. We had to play Jose Calderon.
And he single-handedly won one playoff game for us.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
I appreciate the one game he brought, but it's just like we had to bring in Jose Calderon.
Yeah.
Last year, Dennis was our backup. There was like no drop off, and there were times when Dennis would finish the game over our starter. And but anywho.
Yeah, I know we can't spend too much time on the Dwight article, but for those who haven't read it, basically the article says that Dwight was the exact player that they should have expected him to be this year, but that the poor fit should have been 100% predictable. So that's kind of the short version of the article. So,
which I agree 100%. And this season basically played out exactly how I thought. I met Brad once at a game. Yeah, that's right. I'm name dropping. Supposedly, I'm supposed to hate the other podcasters on the site, but hey,
oh no,
go talk to Brad. He's actually a really nice guy. Go visit him at the games. He's really helpful, really nice, really open.
we love
But I
Brad.
talked to him, and I talked to him, and he said, I'm like, it's just everything we predicted this year. It's not like I'm surprised with the losses, and I'm like, yeah. And that's what your article was, basically summarizing the game against Denver that I was at when I was having that conversation with Brad. And your article summarized that. It's like, I'm not surprised, but it is what it is.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not surprised. But God, it looked so pretty 2 years ago, and now it looks so ugly.
Yeah. Well, it also kind of makes me wonder, like, so some have questioned if Dennis was overhyped as a defender, which I kind of wonder how much of that was due to Horford, of how great of a assisting off the roll he was. Because I see Dennis putting in more effort running through screens than Jeff does at times. So I don't know. It's just kind of like you kind of miss that. You're like, oh, our perimeter defense was great. And yes, Dwight helps with pushing big guys out. And yes, we get offensive rebounds, but it's kind of like you sacrifice two things. It's like he brings two things that are better, but there were other like 6, 7 categories that, we dropped in, making it easy for you video game nerds. So you can imagine this.
Yeah, and I will say that I was guilty early in the season. I wouldn't say of overhyping Dennis defensively, but I was saying that I was seeing some encouraging things in his defensive play early in the season, in that he was taking fewer chances, he wasn't gambling as much, he was playing a little bit more of an honest style. But as the season went on, I think he did struggle because when he was a backup, he would like throw himself at the guy he was defending with all of his energy, basically defend the guy end to end, But he could do that when he's playing 17 minutes. But I think that one of the things he really struggled working through, kind of get the mental aspect of the game, is how to allocate his energy on both ends of the court, playing 32, 33, 34, but playing twice as much as he did last year. So I think he was, conserving energy at the right time in the game, conserving energy on certain possessions. You have to do that to know where to bring your energy level up and when to conserve it. And that, I think that as the season went on, he really struggled with that. And that's where he, but I think Brad called it out very, very correctly across the season when he said that Dennis looks like he took a step back defensively. Brad was exactly right. And I think that has a lot to do with he's a first-year starter, and he's handling a workload he's never had to handle before energy-wise.
Yeah, and to me it's encouraging because it's like towards the end of the year, he had that burst on offense, and it's just kind of like, okay, well, he's learning. But he's 23, he's still learning.
Yeah, he's 23. He's a first-year starter, and he's learning. But we have the best playoff team we ever had too.
Yeah, and the comparisons for Jeff on this, I will say, Jeff probably had the best backcourt mate that the Hawks have had in the past decade or so next to him to take the pressure off and to handle the ball as well when Jeff first started playing. So
Yep.
I don't want to hear the Jeff T comparisons of when he first started because I love Jeff. I'm one of Jeff's biggest fans, as people know, but even I'm going to acknowledge he had Joe Johnson next to him to handle the ball. And Dennis had Kent Bazemore.
Yeah, and he had for a time he had Jamal Crawford that would handle the ball a lot too. So
Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams,
Lou Williams, yep. He had guys that
Devin Harris. Like
he had guys who were very happy to have the ball in their hand.
Yeah. We have, and Dennis has Tim Hardaway Jr., head Korver, and head. Now I'm happy when Korver has the ball in his hands.
Yes, for sure.
But that's because I want him to shoot. I'm the only one I trust. Like, yeah, Korver's shot was defended well, but I trust it more than seeing, this player wide open. But anyway, getting off topic, one thing I did want to bring up kind of as a fact check about the we talked about the bad moves in the offseason. The Hawks did have one good offseason move that I feel. I felt that it would have taken our first round pick and Jeff Teague to move into the lottery to get a draft pick. The Hawks managed to trade Jeff Teague straight up for a draft pick on that expiring contract. That is the one move I felt we won in the offseason.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. And it's funny because you look at the three teams that were involved. I mean, I love Jeff too. There's a lot of things I like about Jeff, and I hope that he finds himself in a good situation now that he's heading towards unrestricted free agency. But Utah has George Hill, and they're in the second round of the playoffs. The Hawks have Taurean Prince, who was one of the better on-court performers of the rookie class this year. And now Indiana has had their president step down and is no longer with the organization. They barely made it to the 8th seed. They have no idea what they want to do with Paul George. And so when you look at the three teams, the team that benefited the most in the short term was Utah. The team that benefited in the long term, hopefully, is Atlanta, in that hopefully Prince does grow into being a really good player. But the team that definitely lost on both sides of that was Indiana. So, but that doesn't say anything about how I feel about Jeff, and I hope he can find himself in a good spot this summer.
Yeah, and I kind of just want to shout out to all those people that told me that the Pacers were going to be good this year. Suck it! No, sorry. Sorry. Hey, but that's it. That's it for our show. We went a little bit longer than I was anticipating. Hopefully you guys have battled through to make it this far. Maybe I'll make it one giant pod. I was thinking of dividing it up with the multitude of topics, but I'll make it one giant pod. Glenn, you have been wonderful talking with today. My last parting question before we leave for you. Who are you rooting for in the playoffs now?
Well, I'm rooting for Al and Kyle, for sure. I really don't have a team that I'm rooting for. I just want to see good basketball. But I will say that I'm really enjoying watching the Celtics right now. So they're really, really intriguing right now. I know that your listeners are probably not going to find that to be a very popular message, but what they're doing right now is pretty amazing. So not just in terms of game results, but what they're doing, how they're using Isaiah on offense, how they're using Horford on offense. A lot of the basketball nerd in me is just super intrigued by what they're doing. So I'm watching as a fan. I don't have a certain team that I'm rooting for, but the thing that I'm enjoying the most right now is watching the Celtics. So that's what I'll say. Is there a team you're rooting for?
I always root for the nobodies, and that'd be Utah.
Yes.
Yeah, but I may only have another week to do that. So
yeah, they're good. It's just the Warriors are historically ridiculously good.
I mean, I'm rooting for Utah just because they just have all these, not strange, but it's just they're players. Some of the guys I love, like, I will have a soft spot for Joe, watching Boris Diaw still do his thing. Gordon Hayward doing, continuing to do what's there on the bigger stage. Rudy Gobert kind of showing me, what could have been for this franchise, but hey.
I know you're trying to wrap up, but I'm going to take 30 seconds and give, for those who stuck to the end, I'm going to give a real kind of a big reward here at the end.
Here we go.
Josh, have you discovered the podcast that Rob Mahoney does called Breakaway?
Breakaway? No, I have not.
Okay. So Rob Mahoney worked for Sports Illustrated, and about midway through the season, he started a podcast that he put out every 2 weeks called Breakaway. And one of the last 2 episodes that he did in the season was on Joe Johnson.
Oh.
And it was amazing. And so for those Hawks fans that have stuck around to the end, if you haven't gone out and checked out that episode of Breakaway by Rob Mahoney and Joe Johnson, if you are on the fence about Joe Johnson, go listen to that episode of Breakaway. and it will clarify everything you need to have clarified you about Joe Johnson. So there you go.
I love him. I love it. I'm gonna go check it out actually. But Glenn,
it's good.
I had a wonderful time talking to you, man. I gotta bring out your inner nerd and inner conspiracy theory more often. We gotta have a pod sometime soon. I need to stop slacking and bring it back, especially for the off season.
Yes. So on behalf of all of the CawCast community, welcome back. I'm really glad you're back. And any time that you want to bring me on, just hit me up, and I'm happy to jump on and talk with you. I have a lot of fun talking with you, Josh.
Yeah, man. Hopefully in the upcoming few days, maybe over the weekend. I don't know. If there's some sort of emergency, maybe over the weekend. I typically like to record on Sundays, since that it customizes for all time zones.
Yeah, well, I'm in your time zone for another 7 days too. So if any of this front office stuff kind of is worth talking about, just let me know and I'll jump on.
Cool, man. Appreciate it.
All right, good to talk to you, Josh. Take care, buddy.
Thank you.
Bye.